I'm going to present you with the tale of two cities story, and then I want you to pay attention and then follow me. So the narration is here. Yes, it is this one, I guess. Yes, the period the shoemaker is here. I think the shoemaker didn't upload. I would just upload it, I guess. No, not uploaded. Yeah, look, the shoemaker it is. So let's the camera here, so you can see it. The shoemaker. A large cask of wine dropped and broke. This happened in a narrow street of Saint Anthony, a suburb in Paris. As a consequence, the wine spilled all over the street. The people about the street rushed to the spot in a happy expectation. Some people knelt down and tried to scoop up the wine in their hands and sip it before it ran out between their fingers, while some unsuccessfully tried to gather it in pots. A few mothers dipped their handkerchief in it and squeezed a few drops of the soaked wine into the mouth of their infants, while some contented themselves with drinking from the wine-soaked piece of the broken cask. As long as the wine lasted, people laughed, joked, and danced, forgetting everything else. But once it was over, people returned to their squalid homes, and then the gloom settled once more over the street. For these people lived in sickness. In sickness. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. In sickness, yeah. Want and dirt, never having known comfort or care in life. They toiled from morning to night and yet could not earn enough to appease their hunger. One look at them as they dragged their wasted bodies in rags was enough to move any human, but not the nobles. The owner of the wine shop, Monsieur Defarge, to whom the cask had been sent, stood watching the whole drama. He was a dark man, stoutly built, with short curly hair. He seemed a man of strong determination, who, having decided upon a course, would not change, whatever he may have to face. Madame Defarge, his wife, sat knitting behind the counter. She was a stout woman with well-formed features. She had watchful eyes and then a very confident manner. As Monsieur Defarge entered the shop, she gave a small cough and raised her eyebrows, a message for him to attend to the new customers who had walked in. Monsieur looked around. Still his eyes rested on the elderly gentleman with a young lady. As he passed behind the counter, he noticed the gentleman telling the young lady, "This is our man." But he pretended not to notice. The two strangers and engaged in a discussion with the three men who were drinking at the counter. "So how are things, Jacques?" First man. "Has all the spilt wine gone?" "Every drop, Jacques," answered Defarge. "It is not often," commented the other Jacques, "that these poor folks get the taste of wine. Is it not so, Jacques?" So it is, Monsieur Defarge returned. You see, these people live very hard lives. Am I right, Jacques? Said the third. You are right, replied Defarge again. After they had paid for their wine, uh, they left the place. Madame Defarge had been watching all this very carefully, with a disinterested face, knitting all the while. Just then, Mr. Lorry stepped forward, asking for a word with the owner. Willingly, sir, said Defarge, and quietly led him to the door. Their talk was brief, and Defarge listened with singular attention. After the talk, he got up and asked them to follow him. All the while, maybe Madame or Defarge sat knitting quietly, as if she did not see or hear anything. Miss Laurie and Lucy walked out of the doorway into a little courtyard with Defarge. Here Defarge stopped for a moment and, bending down on one knee, kissed the girl's hand. Defarge had worked at Dr. Manette's house as his trusted servant. He got up and pointed. And yeah. He got up and pointed to the older stairs before them. And therefore, is he alone? Asked Mr. Lorry. Yes, I cannot take any risk, replied Defarge. Is he greatly charged? Said Defarge, with such an anguish, with that anguish, with that, with that Mr. Lorry hardened himself to see what was coming. The steps took long to end. When finally they reached the door, it was locked. Why is the door locked? Asked Mr. Lorry in surprise. He asked. Mr. Lorry asked, said Mr. Lorry in surprise. Yeah, he has lived locked up so long that an open door would frighten him and he could come to some harm. Lucy, who, though could not hear anything of their talk, was under such strong emotion that she trembled from the sorrow and the dread of the coming moment. Courage, dear miss, courage. The worst will be over, but in a moment. Think of the relief and then hope you will bring to them. Asking them to stay back, Defarge struck the door and clumsily removed the lock, then opening the door. Slowly, he looked inside and said something. A faint voice answered him. He looked back over his shoulder and beckoned them to enter. Called him to enter. Mr. Lorry put his arm around Lucy's waist as he felt she was going faint. Let us go in, he said to Lucy, trying to control his tears. I am afraid, answered Lucy. Afraid of what? Of him, my father? Drawing his arm over her shoulder, he took Lucy inside. Defarge closed Defarge closed the door and, locking it, returned to the window, stood there. The room was dim and dark, with only a little light coming from the roof door. It was difficult to see anything initially, yet some work was being done in the room. A white-haired man sat on the bench, with his face towards the window and back towards the door, busy making shoes. "Good day," said Defarge, bending over the old man. The head was raised for a moment, and then a faint voice answered, as if coming from a distance. "You are still at work." "I see. I see." After a long silence, the old man lifted his head and said in a feeble voice, "Yes, I am working." The head dropped again. His eyes looked worn with misery. This voice, not more than a faint echo, had no mark of human emotions. He seemed lost. "I want to let in a little more light here. Would you be able to bear it?" asked Defarge. "I must bear it, if you let in," replied the old man feebly. Defarge opened the window some more. A beam of light fell in. The man sitting inside could be seen more clearly. He had a white-haired a white bird, ruggedly cut, a hollow face, but very bright eyes. "Are you going to finish this pair of shoes today?" asked Defarge, and at the same time signaled Mr. Lorry to come forward. "I suppose so. I don't know. You have a visitor? Show him what you have made. Take it, monsieur, and see." Mr. Lorry took it in his hand, maybe Lorry to me, in his hand. "Tell monsieur what kind of shoe it is, and the maker's name." "It is a young lady's walking shoe. I have made it according to the present fashion," answered the old man, looking at it with some pride. "And the maker's name?" asked Defarge. The shoemaker sat still, running his hand through his white haired white bird like this, staring vacantly into space. After some moments, he said, "Did you ask my name?" "Yes, 105, North Tower." With this he bent to work again. "You are not a shoemaker by trade?" asked Mr. Lorry. His haggard eyes turned to Defarge and then to Mr. Lorry. "No, I was not a shoemaker by trade. I learned it here in the prison." He then fell silent. "Monsieur Manette, do you not remember me? I am your old banker, Jarvis, and this is Defarge, your servant." On hearing this, a slight glint of intelligence and recognition came up on the old man's face, but disappeared soon. With a long, deep sigh, he resumed his work. "Have you recognized him, monsieur?" asked Defarge in a whisper. "Have you recognized him, monsieur?" "Yes, I know it. He's him. Yes, I know it. He's him." "Hush! Let us talk softly." Lucy now moved closer to the bench where he sat. He did not see her. Not a word he spoke. Not a sound was made. She stood silent beside him. He bent over his work. In a while, as he turned to pick up something, his eyes caught sight of her dress. He looked up and saw her face. Lucy stood still, tears streaming down her face. Who are you? Are you the jailer's daughter? No. Unable to control her voice, she sat on the bench beside him. He stared at her uh, golden hair, and then held, golden hair, um, and then held it with his fingers. With a confused look on his face, he took out a folded rag tied around his neck and opened it carefully. It had 2 strands of golden hair. It is the same hair. How can it be? Who are you, girl? Listening to his agitated voice, the 2 gentlemen stepped forward, but Lucius told them in a low voice, I entreat you, gentlemen, do not come near us. Do not speak. What is that? Whose voice is that? He cried. Who are you, girl? What is your name? Lucy fell upon her knees and said, I will tell you my name and who my mother was, but not now. It has been hard for all of us. All I can tell you now is to touch me and bless me. He rested his face against her breast, comforting him like a child. Your sufferings are over. I've come here to take you to England, to be at peace and rest at last. Oh yeah, the old man gave himself to her embrace and wept unconsolably. Then he lay exhausted. We must arrange for taking him away from Paris at once, said Lucy. Is he fit for the journey? Asked Mr. Lorry. It is best for my master to be removed from France, said Defarge gravely. Shall I arrange for a carriage? Lucy nodded, and both the gentlemen moved out to arrange for the carriage and travelling papers. After they left, Lucy sat by her father's side, watching him. It began to get darker and darker. Everything had been made ready for the journey. Before leaving, he ate and drank quickly what they gave him. Putting a cloak around him, Lucy drew her arm through him and led him. It was dark outside. The street was deserted. Only Madame Defarge could be seen leaning against the doorpost. The shoemaker had got into the coach, and the rest too were following when Mr. Lorry stopped. He asked Defarge for his shoes-making tools, as he thought he may need them. Madame Defarge brought them quickly. Once they were inside the carriage, Defarge gave the command to the barrier. The coach cracked his whip, and they clattered away. They crossed streets after streets, till they finally came to one of the city gates. A soldier, swinging a lantern, approached them. Your papers, travellers. Defarge got down, and showing him the papers, whispered to him something in a grave manner. The soldier listened with attention and then ordered. Ordered for what? Defarge took leave by saying goodbye to them. The coach left the city for the port where a ship was to take them to England. Inside the coach, Mr. Lorry posted the question again, though for the final time, with the evident pleasure. I hope you are happy to have been recalled to life. I can't say, was the reply. Thank you. That's the end of it.